All right, good afternoon. So we're looking at this module of governance, risk, and compliance management, right? Okay. Before we start looking at the nitty-gritties of the module syllabus, right? We're going to look at the approach we are going to take towards learning this module together, right? Okay. There's no need for me to introduce myself. You guys don't have to introduce yourselves as well. There is a register. I will know all names from there. And we've communicated via WhatsApp and all those kind of things. So I already know your names anyway. On the other hand, it is important that we understand mostly how to write, right? Because this module is the simplest in the entire syllabus, entire syllabi of, well, some would beg to differ, but I think it's the easiest, right? Governance. Okay, for me, I think I've been fortunate that I've been studying governance for quite some time, and I also happen to be a member of the Institute of Directors, and therefore governance is what we do, right? Okay. However, looking at the way to write, it's going to be my responsibility to teach you how to write. It's going to be my responsibility to teach you how to approach the exam, right? And that is what you guys are paying for, right? And then we need to also have an understanding of the syllabus and how the exam is going to be tested, right? Now, with this module, the assignments are already there, which are two, right? Two assignments, and they are both essays. The syllabus is comprised of a total of 5 learning units, only 5. But this module is purely an application-based module. So as much as the content is very little, right? But the application is a lot, right? And therefore, we shall cover these 5 learning units in 13 sessions. 2 of those sessions will be taken out towards the assignments, right? And the assignments contribute 30% of your year mark, right? Which means 15% each. That's huge, right? That is huge. So we cannot fail these assignments, right? So at least if you can go in the exam, for all my students, the requirement is at least 25 should be in the pocket when you go into the exam, right? Then you're only looking for at least 50 out of 70 in the exam so that we get those distinctions, right? So if you do not get a distinction for this module, you will be a disappointment to me, right? All right. Then you must get at least 40% year mark. Okay, this should not be here. It's not for you guys. It's for those who I don't teach, right? Okay. Then assignment 1 is based on a case study. So there's a case that's given. Then assignment 2 is research based, right? So how we are going to do this is you and I are going to discuss the assignment in class, right? You guys are going to attempt the assignments and submit the assignments to me for marking, right? After I mark and review I give you your feedback. Then you're going to submit after redoing the assignment. If you still want to run the assignment by me, you can do that. But to run the assignment by me, you have to book for an appointment. No extra cost because you guys are paying a lot of money already to study with us, right? Okay, so there's no extra cost to book an appointment, right? And at least book an appointment a week before so that I can be able to clear my diary for you, right? That is if you want, whether it's a video conference, it's a call, or it's face-to-face, right? We're going to move to 16th Road, right? From here, we're going to go to 16th Road, but for now, we are still here. And according to the look of things as well, we're going to have the other classes in Hatfield. I didn't want to create a Hatfield class, but so it seems that by popular demand, we have to do it, right? So we might probably summarize most of these sessions, right? So I've got 11 sessions remaining. Today we're covering 1. So we'll have 4 learning units remaining and 10 sessions remaining to cover the content, all right? And therefore it means we're going to look at a number of case studies and a number of researches, right? In order for you guys to say we are fine. Our classes will run from now until, I think for you guys, these are the first sessions, so it should be end of August, right? Beginning of September there. Then we are taking a break, September, October. Then we resume in November. December, we are together. Then we'll take a bit of around Christmas time, holidays there, right? Because most people travel. You say?
I thought you wrote in December and that's it.
No, it's in January.
Oh, it's in January.
Yes.
Oh, it's in February.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. So yeah, it's actually February.
Yeah.
But actually they call them January exams. But they might fall into Feb as well. Yes. So it's a long period. So we've got the entire year together. All right. The entire year together. So around when people knock off from work for December holidays, I don't want to burden you because you guys would be knowledgeable anyway. But I might have those who want revision. You guys are free to attend if you want to. It's up to you. No extra cost, right? No extra cost at all. And then we're going to also proceed with our revision into January. Then we break for you guys to be on your own and get your distinctions, right? I'm not aiming for less than a distinction in both subjects that I'm teaching you guys. Distinctions, please. Right? It's possible. It's achievable, right? Okay. Then the exam, right? So the exam is structured in 2 areas. There is the case based questions section. Yes.
Will you giving us that one?
You will get these as well. So, okay. You're entitled to get notes. You're entitled to get slides, right? You're entitled to have access to the videos, right? And you're entitled to get guidance in terms of your assignments, right? What else did I leave out? Yes, you are also entitled to an exam pack, right? And then you are also entitled to consultation as and when you require assistance. Is that clear?
So the exam bank has how many exams? Past papers?
A lot.
Plus minus.
We're looking at almost all of them
Oh.
that have been written.
Okay.
Yeah. But now you see what happens. There are certain repetitions of questions and all that. So there's nothing I can do. It's just a repetition of questions. So you'll have them. It will stipulate the exam paper and the solutions will be there as well. Okay. Another question?
I do have another one. The assignment, when is it due?
Sorry, when is it due?
When is it due?
I haven't checked. No. I think I have.
Study out?
There's one in March, I think. Oh, is it for 01 or is it for what? 16 April. Oh, that's the first one. Okay. The essay, the case study one, right? Okay, that's fine.
And it's already out for case study.
All of them, both of them, sorry, both of them.
That's not finding stuff sometimes on that thing.
Oh, is it?
On that website.
Oh.
Maybe we can help you.
Yeah, it's fine. I can help you. I've been using my M.INST.D
So
forever.
is there also a set book? What's called set book?
Like a textbook.
Yes.
For this one, you need to use the King Code for certain governance topics, right? But there is a textbook for corporate governance, right? But really, whether you want or I don't really advise my students to buy any textbooks if you don't want, because it's not really it's not an open book. You get the sense. So you get everything that you need from it. That's why you're paying me. Why would you pay and still buy a textbook?
There's one of these courses, because I'm doing 2, 3, and 4. I think there's one that's got like 40 articles that I've got to read. The 3. Oh.
So well, that you can sort out with Reynolds.
Okay. No, it's just that when you look through, sometimes the courses seem the same. And then I get confused.
They are related, yes.
Yeah, the only one for me that sticks out is credit. Because credit risk is, I can clearly understand. But this one, it doesn't seem to be much in the thing on it.
No, actually, it has. Governance seems very little and all that, but there's a lot of application that comes with it. And sometimes you might see that there are no, they have not given you a lot of case studies, right? But I will give you a lot of case studies. I will give you a lot of articles, right? So that you'll be able to apply, because it's important, right? Now, so the exam has got also essays and short structured questions, right? And like I said, it's my responsibility for me to guide you on how to answer the questions, all right? Now, so if you guys have invested your time and money to be here, right, you must get the service that you're paying for. You get the sense? All right. Now, the examiner might decide to bring multiple choice, but, well, that's entirely up to them. We haven't seen that, right? And if they decide, we will be advised prior to writing the exam. Okay. Any questions before we go there? Any questions? All right. So let's look at what risk is. For those who are in 801, you would see that some of the things are a repetition, right? But Do not worry because the modules overlap, right? What is risk? Ephraim, what is risk?
It's
Bless you.
probability of uncertainty, or it's something that will prevent the organization from achieving its objective.
Okay, isn't that a limitation? Because if you say it's something that would prevent an organization to achieve its objectives, then that is a limitation, not risk. You get what I'm saying? Because sometimes, I know you get the sense. I know you know, but I caught you off guard, that's one. Secondly, it's about the use of words. You get the sense? And that's what they do when you write. Certain students have a tendency of panicking when they get something that they were not expecting. And remember, that is the purpose of exams, is to give you something that you are not really expecting in order for you to write and pass. So as much as you know, but a question will just give you what is risk. From nowhere, you think that that's a simple question that they would not ask, and you go into the deeper things and ignore this, which is now a difference between a 75% and a 74 or 73%. Then you don't get that cum laude. And if you guys are attending class with Reynolds and myself, right, then we should have a lot of you graduating with cum laudes. Of course, it's possible. So what is risk? Esther, you want to try that?
I think there's probability of something good or bad happening in the business. It can happen in order to boost the business, or it can happen in order to cause the damage in the business.
Yes. In other words, what Esther is saying that is that risk can be upside or downside. Does this work if I do this? Do you see? Still see? It's not there. Okay. Now, so risk is a probability of deviation from expectation. Right? Hear me carefully. It's a probability, which means we are putting in the fact that it's measurable, right? But it is a probability of a deviation from expectation. Now, the deviation may be upside or downside. Now, the deviation, the upside deviation, means that we are getting something more positive than what we expected. And the downside deviation means that it's negative than what we expected. And that's what all these three statements are saying. Quantifiably, risk is usually assessed by considering historical behaviors and outcomes. In finance, standard deviation is a common metric associated with risk. A metric is a standard of measure. Do we agree? Now, these things are simple and straightforward. right? They only require you guys to apply them, right? You're getting excited because they standard deviation slotted there, right? I saw that. Yes, my friend.
No, I'm just saying some of us something.
Oh, I see, I see. But don't worry, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Yes. Now, risk management in Africa, including South Africa, because normally South Africa, we don't include it in Africa, right? You know why?
No.
It's an economic perspective that you haven't seen statistics and whatever when the business journals, they say businesses which are performing well in Africa, excluding South Africa. You haven't seen that.
In South Africa, they're too private in a way that not all of them, more of them are not wanting with their information for the sake of it.
No. That you see that it's not optional. From a corporate governance perspective, right? And from a secretarial perspective, every entity, you can go into a company and say, I need a set of your financial statements. How much they cost? Then they should give you a price.
That's ideally.
It's not even optional for a company. They cannot say no. You get the sense. So the reason why they say businesses in Africa excluding South Africa is because South Africa's economy cannot be compared with any other African economy. You get the sense? Yes. I know you guys complain a lot, right? It's different dynamics. You get the sense? If you've not been exposed to a particular environment like Zimbabwe, right, you'd feel the heat in South Africa, but once you step your foot in Zimbabwe, then you know there is hell on earth. God forgive me.
In other countries like outside South Africa, because you go to overseas, then you come back, you get to appreciate the warmth and hospitality that South African have.
Yes, that's true. I'm telling you.
But when in South Africa, you feel like there's tribalism, days, and those things are not there.
It's way much less than what you can face now. Right. Just go to Zimbabwe for a week. I'm telling you, you would want to come back.
Pre or post now?
No, in and out.
Well, pre was much better. I can say this wherever. Pre was much better. Now even the skin, you can feel that the sun somehow is different. Yes, the sun is even complaining that this environment is not friendly at all. I'm telling you. I don't know what happens, that even nature starts feeling the presence. Have you realized that there are certain people who, even on soil which is not very favorable to plants, but if they touch whatever, it flourishes, right? And there are those who, whatever they touch, turns into stone. You get the sense? Yeah. People differ. I'm not going to say more. All right. Okay, but anyway, so overall, it is possible and prudent to manage investing risks by understanding the basics of risks and how it is measured. So risk should be measured. Now, these are some of the modules that you guys are doing with trainings now, where you measure the risk and all that, right? Learning the risk can apply to different scenarios, and some of the ways to manage them holistically will help all types of investor and business managers to avoid unnecessary and costly losses. So it is important to understand risk and how to measure it. But now, where does risk come from? Sorry? Within the operations, yes. Hence 4801 operational risk, yes. But those which are non-operational risk, where do they emanate from? Someone we spoke about this in the previous class.
Independent political, economic.
The business environment. The business environment. Right? So risks emanate from internal, market, and external environment. Right? Now, the definition of the business environment means all of the internal and external factors that affect how the company functions, including employees, customers, management, supply, and demand and business regulation. Customer expectations being an example of an external factor or a market factor instead, because we do have somewhat a control towards our customers, right? But we don't have a control over the external factors. And that's why we look at the firstly analysis to manage our external risks, right? But businesses do not operate in a vacuum, but rather in a dynamic environment. In your notes, you need to add VUCA, right? Now, what VUCA means is, I used to have a boss who loved this VUCA statement all the time. Whenever he would give a presentation, he would speak of VUCA, right? Now, which means volatile, uncertain, yes, complex, and agile. So it means that business operates in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and agile environment, emanating from various factors within the external environment. Are we together? All right. Dynamic environment that has a direct influence on how they operate and whether they will achieve their objectives or not. So political factors. We spoke about Zimbabwe just now. Political factors are factors which actually influence how businesses operate. I don't know if you've been exposed or if you've tried to do business in Zimbabwe as a foreigner there, right? Now come to South Africa, you operate a business, right? You bring a business, it's friendly, you get the sense. I'm operating a business here, it's friendly. Go to Zim and try to operate a business, it's not friendly. Why? The very first thing before you start operating, the politicians are knocking at your door, right? They want something, right? Of course, they want something. Please, and they don't even ask, they demand, right? I remember there was a certain gentleman who wanted to to have a mining company in Zim, white South African guy. Before he could start documentation, right? Okay, when we are paying lobola in Zim, they charge various kind of stuff, right? There's what they call vuramuromo. Yes, okay, you have it as well. Okay, lovely. Okay, so they wanted him to pay that, right? But this time it comes with a price tag of $1 million, right? And you pay it to whosoever is at the helms at that time, right? Once you pass by that office, you pay your vulamlomo, right? And then everything else, we can now talk. You get the sense? Yes. So certain political environments are not favorable for business, right? And not only from, and now the thing that happens is the factors of the external environment are somehow interrelated. And that's why you see here, they are connected. Politics affects economies, right? You see, with the state capture, for instance, right? South Africa was then downgraded to junk status. You get the sense. And then the rate of borrowing goes high. You get the sense. Exchange rates start getting affected. Right now, remember, it used to be 8:1 to the dollar just a few years ago, and now it has almost doubled. It actually used to be 7.5 in the, so it has actually doubled. Now it's 15:1 because of certain political aspects which result in risks. And you'll see at the end of this session, right, when we talk about what the current president has done, right? Well, there might be arguments here and there, but yeah, okay. All right. Now, so politics affects economics. Politics also might bear an effect on demographics. How? For instance, pardon me that I'm using the Zimbabwean environment mostly, right? But some of these things also apply to South Africa, right? Now, currently in Zim, we now have a high child mortality rate. Now, for those who have done a bit of geography, you'll understand when we say child mortality, we mean the deaths of children, right? Now, this is because of poor medical infrastructure and poor medical treatment. Hospitals are closed. I don't know if you've watched, there's a certain video of a Magogo who was now assisting women as a midwife in her own house and not taking any form of payment for that service, just to assist women so that they can give birth properly. But hospitals are there, and hospitals have been shut down, and you find one politician who comes to South Africa for a holiday and buys a car worth of 2.7 million rand from petty cash. Then you get to wonder where our priorities lie. So that is now what we call economic failure, right? Because it's prioritizing, and this may happen to a business as well. You get the sense? This may happen to a business as well, that executives now start prioritizing they are on bonuses at the expense of growing the wealth of the investors, and the business fails. Now, we've seen a number of businesses fail over the years. We have a VBS issue. Same aspect we're talking about. VBS, business failure. Why? Because some people within the system failed to apply proper governance structures and decided to loot money for personal benefit. Imagine those people were standing on the queues, right? You've seen the videos, right?
The videos, but the thing is, it's another different dimension because we have politicians that actually borrowed money from DBS and they've never paid it back. So what the management of DBS did was just a drop in the ocean compared to the money borrowed by politicians.
No, they were in there together.
Because, for instance, the money that went to Zuma's cases, there was a lot of money that was borrowed to Zuma for Uganda.
Oh yes.
That was never paid back. And no one is saying anything about it.
But Zuma's amount was just a drop in the ocean. Just a few hundreds of millions. You get the sense. There is more to it than that we don't know. You get the sense. But one thing I can tell you is it was poor governance structures. That's all. You get the sense. Poor governance structures, hence the importance of this module, right? So now, where we have a high child mortality, right? In future, a country will be exposed to what is known as a demographic time bomb. It means that the country is sitting on a demographic time bomb whereby in future we will run short, right, of the economically active people, right, and fail to sustain the economy. And hence, China has opened doors to giving a lot of foreigners, right, educational bursaries and all that, right? I've got my young brother who's there in China. He went there on a high percentage scholarship, right? We've been paying just a little bit. Of course, their currency is also not that powerful, excuse me. But despite the case, right, because they were sitting on a demographic time bomb. You get the sense? Because of their one-child policy that they had before. So they had a one-child policy trying to eliminate a high population, right? And those who would have one child would actually get subsidies for having one child, right? But now they encourage people to have more children.
A lot of girls got killed.
That time, yes. Even in African culture, sometimes there was a particular point in time when girls were getting killed. All right. So when we look at the personality analysis now, we're looking at political factors, economic factors, socio-cultural factors, technological factors, ecological factors, legal factors, institutional factors, and international factors. So you see that when you look at social, it's socio-cultural factors linked to demographics, It's part of social cultural factors, right? Like for instance, try to operate a business of selling Bibles in Turkey, right? Turkey is an Islamic environment, right? So try to sell Bibles which are Christian based, your business will fail. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay, any questions? Now, so what are the importance of the business environment? We can detect where the strengths are, right? Or where the opportunities are. Then we can also detect where the threats are, both threats, weaknesses, opportunities, and weaknesses. Sorry, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we can also look at the SWOT analysis. But now what you need to know is the S and W are internal. Strengths and weaknesses emanate from the internal environment, while these opportunities and threats are from an external environment. I hope I'm making sense. Okay. Then there's also issues like social acceptance, right? This is important in modern day business because if you're not socially accepted, somebody can just boom, put an issue on social media. I had that last week, right? I had that last week where there was a particular company, I won't mention them by name, right? But some years back, I needed to rent a property. I applied, and as a business person, right, I had a sizable income, right, which is not fixed, right, which was not fixed. But again, I had a lot of expenses, right? And then, however, using the bank standards, right? If you're to rent a property, you must have an income which is at least 3 times more, right? And that was there, right? So I applied and paid a fee to them, right? They decided to decline my application and said you can't afford it, and then they decided to withhold the application fee, right? Not a lot of money. Then I decided to stop, and as I was going through my legal studies and all that, I got to understand that this guy's actually robbed me here, right? So I decided to go to them and reclaim my application fee. No, just said, just give me my application fee because what you did was wrong. Then they avoided me and all that until I went to their offices, and then they became violent, and one of them pulled out a gun and all that. The police came and decided to forgive him without, because he's got a family, right? Then I decided to pardon him and just said, okay, give me my money. After they gave me my money, then they posted on social media. Fortunately, I had an eye somewhere, and my friend did tell me that, look, I just saw this on Facebook. People, which was another case, defamation of character. Then I said, look, here, I can sue you. Then the principal of the company talked to his people, and then they gave a public apology, because I told them to give a public apology. So they gave a public apology and then they took down the posts. You see? So imagine if you are socially unaccepted, then you have such issues flying on social media. Or if it was me who had decided to put the case on social media, how would it have affected their own business operations? You get the sense? So that's what happens. Right. Any questions? Then we've got categories of the business environment. We've got the micro or internal. We've got the market, which is normally suppliers and customers. Then we've got the macro, that which we cannot control. All right. Any questions? All right. We still have time. Right, let me give you a 5 minutes break and then we resume from there. Now, we also have to get an understanding of the interrelationship between the functions or principles of management and risk management. Like, for instance, planning. Planning assists us to understand where we want to go, and then it can assist us to actually identify the impediments or the risks that we are exposed to. Right? Then we also have got organizing. Organizing sets a direction for the entity and therefore reduces a number of operational risks. Right? Same as directing. Right? Directing also gives us a pathway of how we have to walk as an entity. And since we have a pathway of how to walk, we can easily identify where the risks might lie. Are we together? Right. And when we look at controlling, obviously controlling now is a post-implementation exercise, right? Which tells us historically of what risks we faced within our operational system or operational framework, and therefore assists us to be able to identify what we need to do so that we do not meet the very same risks as we've met before. Are we together? All right. So you see how straightforward these modules are, right? They're very straightforward, yes? They're interlinked, yes.
So if you do one without the others, it becomes difficult.
Yes. So for you, you can actually add the other two if you want to.
Which one register now for us?
No, it has been extended.
Oh.
Yes.
But how many assignments are there? What are the others?
No, remember, with the assignments, we first do them together in class.
I think that's not a bad idea. Just register for all once and for all.
Once and for all, that's what I always tell. It says that, okay, should I remove my gloves? Okay, I've removed them. It's just that the environments from which we come differ, right? No, not spoiled. Not spoiled. It's experiences. People use the term spoiled wrongly, right? It's experiences, right? Tina, from Africa there, we have been exposed to the harshest of situations, right? And we know how to work very odd hours, right? And so many hours, right? You hardly find people who can teach for the whole day, right? Without taking a rest. To some, they can't do that, but I still feel energetic. And even after now, I want to watch a movie.
No, it's different. I think everyone has their strength in life and like what they enjoy with. And I always say that if you find what you love and it makes money for you, you're blessed. So you never get tired. Like every day is like a vacation to you. So that kind of person you are.
Okay, that, yes, I agree with you 100%. But also, let's talk about the issue of taking these modules, right? Taking these modules, 5 of them, right? I still feel as if not taking all 5 of them is somehow fear of burning out, right? Or you feel that you can't manage it, you're limiting yourself. That's how I feel. I'm not saying I'm right, but it's just my own perception, right? And taking all of them and passing all of them, which is 100% possible, right? It will boost your confidence even further.
As much as you said we got different spaces, right?
Yes.
You've got your brothers and sisters from Zim. They're doing 13 subjects in a school setting.
Yes.
In South Africa, it's 11. So basically, from
yes, that's what I meant.
I know. That's what
exactly.
you wanted, but you didn't want to.
Yeah. Besides, what other things that happen is, remember, from our side in Zim, most of these things we did at high school. You get the sense? So whatever we are learning, it's just, you just get a few things added to what we have studied already.
So it becomes a recap.
Yes, so nothing is really very new. You get the sense? Nothing is really that new because most of these things we have done. So, which also becomes an added advantage, right? And that's why I respect people from this environment who then have to be able to study further, even up to PhD. Those people are more hardworking than we are, because for us, we don't have to work. The only time I feel that I worked hard in my life when it comes to studies was when I was doing my high school. After that, everything has just been a walk in the park. It has been easy, just a few additions here. If it's the accounting route, I don't even mention. I never learned anything really new. I could actually add some of the things that I did in high school, which I never did. You see, when I was studying accounting, up to a point where I become a chartered person. You get the sense? Yeah. All right. Risk management model. So now, since we are talking of all these risks and risk management, then there's normally a model that covers all types of risk that we can use to manage these risks, right? The enterprise risk management model. ERM means enterprise risk management. Model covers all types of risk that can potentially affect the achievement of strategic objectives, impair company assets, and or undermine the value of the brand. The enterprise risk management model is incorporated into strategic decisions and key decisions making processes. Right. So there we have the enterprise risk management model. You look at risk categories: strategic, financial, hazard, then you have operational, and categorized into different levels of the business, from operational, tactical to strategic, right? And this is how we need to assess them. Is it an infrastructural risk? Is it a people risk? Is it a process risk? Is it a technological? And sometimes we use most widely what is known as the COSO framework of risk management, right? I did not put it here, but it's the same as this one, the COSO framework. You get the sense. It says that a few of the things somehow differ here and there, but the principle is the same. Right. Then we look at the process of risk management in the risk management model. Right. We look at risk assessment. Right. And remember, earlier on we spoke about risk identification. So this is now beyond the identification of the risk. We're now looking at how to manage them. You need to further assess the risk. Earlier on, I did mention what we call risk mapping, right? Risk mapping, which is a method of assessing the risks, right? Now, remember with risk mapping, I said, we look at risk in two planes, right? We look at the probability or likelihood of a risk occurring and its severity, right? Sorry? Yes, right, which is risk mapping, right? Okay, so when we look at risk mapping, right, we have high, low, low, high, right? So we then categorize further to, this is how we further assess the risks, to categorize them, and after we categorize them, we actually rank them into their priorities. Which risks are of high priority or highest priority, and how do we deal with these risks, right? Then we can look at asset allocation. Now, when we look at asset allocation, we are saying, since we have got this particular risk, to mitigate it, we need to put money towards doing 1, 2, 3 things in order to mitigate this risk, right? Or we need to pay an insurance company in order to transfer the risk to that insurance company. It's also asset allocation because money is an asset. Are we together? Right. Then we also look at the review of ongoing risks. It's a continuous process. So risk management model and results in a process, right, of risk management, right? Same as new allocation of certain resources within the entity. This is when you identify new risks altogether and you allocate additional risks towards these new risks. Is that clear? Right. Then we look at what is known as the functional approach to risk management, right? Because there is the traditional approach to managing risks, and then there is the new functional approach, right? Now, traditional risk management is a risk approach which is managed by various responsible departments according to risk management structures. Risk is managed in each business unit, adapted to each strategy, level of profitability, products, prices, which means each department sees their own risks for themselves, right? But now contemporary studies came about to decide that risk should be a function on its own, to actually create a business function of risk management. And that's why I said earlier on, financial institutions have departments for risk management. Are we together? Right. But certain companies don't even have a risk department because each department sees its own risks for itself. Are we together? They are still using the traditional approach to risk management, whilst there is the functional approach to risk management. All right. That's far the first topic goes, right? But we've got the case study that I highlighted earlier on. Now, in the exam or wherever in the assignment, and as we look at these things, you need to identify the main risks, compliance and governance issues emanating from a given scenario or situation in the business environment. But remember, your studies for risk management do not only cover for profit-making organizations, but even not for profit-making organizations and governments and all that. You get the sense, right? It's an issue of application. So Cyril has done something, right? And what he has done is basically to set up a commission to look into issues of state capture and corruption at state institutions. So you cannot say Cyril has not done anything since he has taken office, right? He has done something. This is +1. You get the sense?
This is -1.
This is +1. He has done something, and therefore we need to look into this case study, right? You can Google it as well. Broadly identify the governance and compliance issues that have been raised in respect of ESCOM, right? Not only ESCOM, right? SABC and SAA, SARS, yes. And the Public Investment Corporation. And this is what you need to do. Go to discussion forum 1.1 to discuss this with your fellow students. It's actually a task that you guys are supposed to do. You get the sense? It's actually a task that you guys are supposed to do.
To get marks on. Sorry, I just want to know before I put too much effort into
Not
this
really,
discussion.
but you have to.
Okay, so we have to go do it and
It helps. It helps.
So you hear other people's comments and you comment.
Yes. Or you start the conversation
Take your
yourself.
view on this whole thing.
Yes.
So how do you get to the discussion forum?
Somewhere they
On the
extending
platform.
alone, extending alone.
If the discussion forum, you go there,
Extend alone.
then you.
You don't have to register. You already
No, you already registered. Once you registered for the module, then you register for the discussion forum. Unfortunately, like I said earlier on, my other student unfortunately could not be here, right? But from next week, she'll be with that other one, she'll be with us. All right, any questions? Are you happy? Sorry? With the progress, yes. You knew very well, right? Yeah.
No, it's not that you must not ask ladies if they're okay.
Sorry?
You must not ask ladies if they're okay.
Why?
Because you won't hear the answer.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that. Are you okay then?
Yeah, then you can.
Are you okay, Ephraim? Yeah, I know Ephraim will give me an objective comment. Are you okay? Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, guys, thank you so much. I've got a lot of preparation to do.
Is this the first assignment?
This is, yes, this is the first learning unit. Yes.
This one an assignment.
Sorry?
This is not an assignment.
Something
So you, the extra is the 4 or 5.
No, I'm doing things
Oh.
Yeah, so I've only got this.
So you can see how you
I was thinking.
I'm okay with it.
as long as you
And I think operations can't be together.
as long as you can
No, operations.
ensure
But no, a lot of work is
always
this one, the one you guys
initially
this was like a lot of calculation.
but it's inside out.
No, the certain things can flip. This complex.
As long as
Can flip this one. Operations are can flip it. The one like risk measurement and stuff, you can't. Because they know the calculation. You know what?
yes, yes, yes. I appreciate